Hello, it's me, Ken Kenneth from the internet. Yeah, we're back with more horror stories. I'm thinking that Ken Kenneth thing might stay around while we're doing the horror story thing. But yeah, for now, let's just see what how we go with it. But yeah, let's go and check out the bridge story.
So this story takes place when I was about 16 years old.
Mm-hmm.
At my school, I
Did
played for
we
the
ask?
volleyball team, and every year we would go to a camp and do volunteer work for this guy. The camp was in the middle of nowhere. When we got to the camp, we immediately started to work until 8 p.m. This was around October, so it was already dark at 8. My two friends and I were sitting around the fire, trying to figure out something we could do so we weren't so bored. We heard that there was a small river down the hill from the camp, and we thought we could check it out. The problem is that it was some guy's property, and the owner of the camp told us to not disturb him since the guy was a little strange. We weren't really supposed to leave the camp, but being 16 years old, we loved breaking the rules. We walked about 10 minutes from the camp and finally reached the river. It was bigger than we expected, and there was a large wooden bridge that crossed it. The bridge was about 20 feet long and was big enough to let a truck go over it. My two friends and I decided to go under the bridge and check it out. As we were walking by the shoreline, we saw two headlights off in the distance moving towards the bridge, so we bolted underneath it and hid. We then heard the truck roll over our heads into the other side. My friends and I chilled there for a while, just talking and throwing rocks in the water. It was
So
about 8:30 at this time.
so they're bored, and so their thought of fun was to go under a bridge and pretty much do the same thing they were doing before.
Now it was pretty much pitch black. That's when we
Massive.
started to hear a slow rumble in the distance. The same truck had come back, and this time it was moving much slower. We stayed put under the bridge, stifling our laughter. Eventually, the truck moved over the bridge, but rather than going over to the other side, the truck stopped right on top of us. The only thing you could hear was the rushing water and the hum of the engine. Then, the door of the truck swung open, and out came a loud thump on top of the bridge. Then we heard a loud scream saying, "I know you're out there! I'm gonna find you!" I looked at my friends and they were both shaking in fear.
They're both
This
like, it's
must have been the
Ken
crazy property
Kenneth.
owner, and he seemed
He
pissed that we
finally
were on
got
his
his
land.
driver's license.
He started screaming and saying he was gonna hurt us if he finds us. We could see that he had a flashlight and he was swinging it
So
around looking
competitive.
for us. We heard loud thumps as he walked around a little bit, calling out for us, and thank God he never went under the bridge.
An idiot.
Eventually, it went silent, and it sounded as if he went back into his truck. I was too terrified to move. We sat there for about 10 minutes, and then my one friend, who we'll call Trevor, whispered in my ear, saying that we
Whoa,
have to go.
that was Ken Kenneth.
I gave him a quick nod, and in slow motion, we moved out from under the bridge. We started to army crawl on the shoreline of the river, and I remember looking behind me to see the top of the bridge. I saw a white Ford F-150. In the driver's seat was the man, staring right at me with a sinister smile, and he even gave me a little wave. At that moment, I screamed and ran. My friends saw me run and took off after me. We could
He
hear
just left them.
screaming from behind us. I took a quick glance behind me and saw that he was chasing after us, and I couldn't quite make out the object in his hand, but it seemed to be a
It's
weapon
like a
of some
knife.
sort. We ran into the forest and ducked behind a bush. It was pitch black in the forest, and we couldn't hear a thing. We sat there for a while, just shaking. The man never walked by us, and we never heard him. After we gathered our courage, we got up and walked back to camp, got into our tents, and tried to fall asleep. The next morning, we talked to the camp owner about the man that owned the property of the river. The camp owner said that he didn't know much about the man, but he knows that he has some mental problems and had been accused of assault. I am so happy that we were able to escape from underneath the bridge. I can't imagine what would
Yeah,
have happened
jeez.
if he caught us.
Well, I'm pretty sure there's a knife in his hand. Okay, that was alright. A lot of them are really long. Let's check out the true Home Alone scary stories.
Go back to sleep. Boy, oh boy, do I have an experience to share with all of you today. This
How about
happened
don't tell me
earlier
what to
this
do?
year during spring break. For quick reference, I'm a sophomore in college, and I live with one other roommate.
I don't really understand like all that stuff, like sophomore, uh, junior, and all that. Like, yeah, Americans have some weird schooling system.
Who we will call Samantha. Anyways, I was working the night shift at McDonald's, and I didn't get home until almost 1 in the morning. By the time I arrived, I'm exhausted, tired, eyes heavier than a 100-pound dumbbell. I couldn't wait to get into bed. But before I did so, I stepped into the shower to try to get the smell of grease and french fries off of my skin. While I'm in the shower, I heard the distinct sound of my bedroom door being opened, followed by footsteps. Assuming it was Samantha, I call her name, to which I get no reply. It was a bit strange since she normally would respond, but I assumed she was just grabbing my phone charger. She had told me earlier in the morning that hers had stopped working, and thus I told her she was free to use mine. As for not responding, I explained this away as the sound of the shower muffling my voice. So about 10 minutes later, I step out of the shower. I dry myself and I change into my pajamas. And finally, I lay in bed. Here's when I notice something. My charger was still plugged into my outlet. Well, that was funny. I look around my room trying to see if perhaps Samantha had grabbed something else.
Maybe
Everything
she
looked
just gave it
untouched.
back.
Strange. Maybe I'd imagined the footsteps. Either way, I knocked out almost immediately. Now, I don't know how long I must have been out for, but at one
What's
point,
up with the
I was
blanket?
awoken by movement in my bed. Just so you know, I have no pets, and Samantha has her own bed, thus I found the movement quite bizarre. I slowly opened my eyes, and what I saw laying next to me was one of the scariest sights of my life. There, staring back at me, with one of the most
And
confused
dead.
expressions I'd ever seen, was a homeless guy. I
Skinhead.
was still somewhat out of it,
It's
but I
King
do
Kenneth.
remember mumbling, "Who are you?
Okay, I'm gonna stop
And
the
what are you
cat
doing in
thing,
my
sorry.
bed?" I recall a simple reply as the man whispered back,
Go back to sleep.
Hearing
Oh,
that,
he
I
has a pretty
snap out of
deep
my
voice.
drowsiness, jump out of my bed, and I grab the pepper spray that was on my nightstand.
No,
"Who?
pepper spray doesn't work
Who the
against
hell
skinheads.
are you? Get out of my house! Now!" The man pretty much noped out of the
Top of his
bed.
voice.
He ran out of the
Get out of
room.
my house
Seconds later,
now.
I hear the front door slam open and then close. Once I no longer heard him, I head over to Samantha's room, only to see it was empty. I now had clarification. I'd heard footsteps in the shower, and it wasn't Samantha. Funny enough, she texted me just 5 minutes after the homeless man ran out of my home. She told me she was going to stay at her boyfriend's house. Well, once I told her what happened, I called the police, and they take my statement when they got there. To this day, I'm absolutely frightened anytime I'm home alone. They never did find the man, but I just hope he never shows up again, because next time, I'll have no problem using my pepper spray. Edit. A lot of people were wondering how the man had gotten into the home to begin with. I forgot to include this, but we have a two-car garage that's attached to our home. The garage door is the kind you use a remote in order to open. Sadly, it had been broken, and we had to resort to opening it by hand. This meant that the homeless man probably tried opening it out of curiosity, and he managed to successfully make his way inside after closing the door behind him.
Which
I
doesn't
believe I
make him
forgot to
homeless
lock the
anymore.
kitchen door,
He wasn't
which
at
is
home.
attached to the garage. So, I believe that explains it.
Okay, we might be able... What was that? Every time I am messing around with scary stuff, weird stuff happens in my room. My table, it just made a noise. It wasn't like a creaking noise. It was like a vibrating noise. I changed from a boy to a girl. Wow. I typed, as you can see at the top, I typed in short horror stories that I made, and it comes up with, I changed from a boy to a girl. The portrait. This will be the last one.
Mr. Spencer has always been a hoarder
Mr.
for as long
Spencer.
as he remembered. He loved antiques more than anything else in the world. vintage books, watches.
Okay, how about no? That voice is gonna be really annoying. Paranormal horror story, sure. Why not?
Back in 2001, I was 6 years old. I grew up in a remote town in far north Queensland, Australia. I knew this boy a year younger than me called Jason. He was the youngest and only boy out of 4 siblings, while his parents were very much lower class bogans, aka white trash. On a regular basis, the children were neglected, which could have been a contributing factor in Jason's death.
Hold on, is this
Jason's
Walmart?
family were staying at a relative's
Oh,
house
okay.
in the outskirts of some town near a construction
Really
site.
good animation.
When no one was watching him, Jason went to the construction site where an accident occurred, and Jason was crushed to death by a large tire. Back at our primary school, there was Memorial Day held for Jason, and because of my age, I was totally oblivious to what had actually happened and had no concept of death. The main things I remember from that day were parents and teachers crying, the planting of the palm tree, prayers, and the tree getting blessed. A few days later, I was waiting to get picked up from school, and I saw Jason walking around the place. There was none of that transparent business. He looked solid and normal. I asked him where he had been, and he looked at me, then ran behind a tree. I looked behind the tree, he was gone. Later he was back again, but further away, walking off somewhere, so I stayed waiting for someone to drive me home. My mother ended up inviting Jason's family to our house. While the sisters and mother were there, Jason kept hanging around them, then disappearing over and over again. My brother kept telling me to stop staring at the family. I said I was looking at Jason, who then poked his head out from behind his mother and poked his tongue out at me.
Jason!
I thought that he was playing, so I chased him and ran around the couch. By the time I got to the other side, he was gone again. This is when things really hit the fan, because I turned to Jason's mother and said, "Where's Jason?" The mother burst into tears. The sisters started swearing at me. My mother scolded me, and my brother was trying not to laugh at everyone's reaction. The last time I saw Jason, my mother and I were at the shop when Jason's mother was walking past, and Jason was running behind her. Years later, after I graduated from boarding school and I was living away from home, I went back to my hometown and went to my old school. I actually forgot why a random palm tree was growing on the grounds of the Year 1 and 2 block until my younger cousin told me it was put there for some dead kid. The palm tree is a dwarf palm tree that grows up near a wash-up sink in the playground. It's a pretty lame place to put it, yet it looks like it's thriving.
Okay. I saw the time, but yeah, I don't know, that felt a lot more short. Let's do top 10, no, 10 sentence horror stories, and then that'll be the last one.
Woke me. After that, I could barely hear the muffled sound of dirt covering the coffin over my own scream. Number 2. I woke up to hear knocking on glass. At first, I thought it was the window, until I heard it come from the mirror again.
These really suck. No, wrong one.
This video is sponsored by
That's way too long. Walmart. Why do you do that one? I'll have to check that one out another time. How much is it? Okay. Don't sleep in your car, sure. Why not? Even though I go out of my way to sleep in the car. Or the old car that we leave lying around, but you know.
Let me start by saying that I really enjoy driving, and I will often be on the road for hours just listening to music and getting lost. So more often than not, I will sleep in my car on the side of a country road. I don't like it when I'm the passenger though, so I always go alone. Usually, I sleep for a bit, wake up, then go home without incident. There's been a couple of times when a deer has startled me, or even a person knocking on my window to make sure that I was okay was met with a scream. But what happened last night takes the absolute cake. I read about a really nice walk online that I wanted to visit. It was about a 5-hour drive, and I had planned to drive for an hour at a time, explore for a bit, then keep going so I didn't get bored. I had taken plenty of food and water and was planning to be gone for about a day,
Yeah, that doesn't
which
hold
I
water.
was, and was going to park in a popular parking spot that caravanners and the like tend to stay overnight. It was lovely, and I had a really good time. I arrived at my sleeping destination and found that there wasn't any space to park. The bays were not laid out, so you just kind of had to use your common sense and find a spot where you weren't blocking anyone. The parking area was free and could only contain about 10 cars or vans without it being too tight. I was a little annoyed, but hey ho. It was a very rural area, so I carried on for a little while and pulled into a lay-by to rest before I drove home. I pulled in and parked. Then I went to sleep, thinking nothing of it. To describe where I had parked, it was opposite a little cottage, but not directly in front of it, and there were plenty of trees, so I didn't feel as though I was intruding on the owners in any way. I felt very safe. For some reason I was having trouble nodding off. Usually, I slept like a baby in my car because it's very spacious and comfortable.
Right.
And as silly as it may sound to some, I genuinely thought that I had nothing to worry about. That was until a long, high-pitched scratching sound woke me up at around 11:30 p.m., just after I
What's up
had
with that
drifted off.
guy?
I was in a confused daze when I saw a very tall, middle-aged man dragging what I thought was a key around the perimeter of my car. He walked very slowly and didn't take his eyes off of me the entire time. He also had a very malicious grin on his face. Horrified, I cranked my chair up and started the car, ready to floor it. But he had made his way to the front of my bonnet, and trees were blocking me from reversing. This is when I saw that he was holding a butcher's knife.
Hit him with
He
your
held it
car.
up and sort of waved it at me. I screamed and laid on the horn, but it didn't seem to faze him. This lasted about 10 to 15 seconds. Not long, but felt like ages. And then he just slowly walked away from my car towards the cottage and proceeded to enter the cottage. I drove home without stopping. I'm never doing that again. Thanks for ruining it for me, genuinely terrifying man. And thanks for ruining my paintwork. I don't know if he was just trying to teach me a lesson for parking outside his house or what. But either way, I'll probably be scarred for life.
Scarred for life, alright. Alright, sounds about right. Anyway, that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed. I shall see you all next video. Bye bye.